Sarah Martinez never imagined that buying her first car would expose the ugliest side of human nature. When the sales manager at Premier Motors humiliated her in front of a crowded showroom, he had no idea whose wife he was insulting. Sarah had always been the type of person who preferred blending into the background. At 28, she worked as a librarian at the downtown branch, a job that paid modestly but filled her heart with purpose. Every day she helped children discover new worlds through books and assisted elderly patrons with computer basics. Her colleagues often remarked on her patience and kindness, qualities that seemed to radiate from her gentle demeanor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What most people didn't know about Sarah was that she had grown up in foster care, moving from home to home throughout her childhood. This experience had taught her to be grateful for small kindnesses and never to judge others based on appearances. She had learned early that you never truly know someone's story just by looking at them. 3 years ago, Sarah's life had changed dramatically when she met David at a coffee shop near the library. He was sitting alone, reading a business journal, and when she accidentally bumped into his table while carrying a stack of books, he had been nothing but gracious about the spilled coffee on his papers. Their conversation that day had stretched for hours, and Sarah found herself drawn to his down-to-earth nature and genuine interest in her work. David had told her he worked in the automotive industry, managing operations for a company downtown. He drove a modest sedan and lived in a comfortable but unremarkable apartment. What Sarah appreciated most about David was that he never made her feel inferior about her simple lifestyle or humble background. When they married 2 years later, it was a small ceremony at the courthouse with just a few close friends as witnesses. The couple had settled into a routine that suited them both perfectly. David left early for work each morning, often before Sarah woke up, and returned home in the evenings ready to hear about her day at the library. They lived frugally, saving money for a future house and maybe children someday. Sarah continued taking the bus to work, a choice that David supported without question, understanding her commitment to environmental responsibility. Recently, however, Sarah's daily commute had become problematic. The city had restructured several bus routes, and her usual 40-minute journey now required 2 transfers and nearly 2 hours each way. After weeks of arriving at work exhausted and leaving the library well after dark, David had gently suggested that perhaps it was time for Sarah to consider buying a car. The idea terrified her. Sarah had never owned a vehicle before, and the thought of taking on a car payment felt overwhelming on her librarian salary. David had offered to help with the down payment, but Sarah's fierce independence made her want to handle this milestone on her own. She had been saving every spare dollar for months and finally had enough for a modest used car. After researching online for weeks, Sarah had identified several reliable models within her budget. She had read countless reviews, compared safety ratings, and even watched YouTube videos about what to look for when buying a used car. Armed with a notebook full of questions and a pre-approval letter from her credit union for a small loan, Sarah felt as prepared as she could be. Premier Motors had excellent online reviews and advertised themselves as a family-owned dealership that had been serving the community for over 30 years. Their website featured smiling staff members and testimonials from satisfied customers who praised the dealership's honest approach and commitment to helping people find reliable transportation, regardless of their budget. On the Saturday morning when Sarah decided to visit Premier Motors, she dressed in her usual weekend attire: clean jeans, a modest blouse, and comfortable walking shoes. She carried her research notebook in a simple canvas bag, along with her pre-approval letter and the cash she had saved for a down payment. Her wedding ring, a simple gold band that David had chosen carefully within their modest budget, was the only jewelry she wore. The dealership lot was impressive, stretching across nearly 2 city blocks with hundreds of vehicles arranged in neat rows. Colorful flags fluttered in the breeze, and large banners advertised special financing deals and weekend sales events. Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness as she approached the main building, a modern glass structure with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing several luxury vehicles. Inside the showroom, the atmosphere was bustling with activity. Well-dressed families walked around gleaming new cars, while sales representatives in crisp shirts and ties discussed features and financing options. The air conditioning provided relief from the summer heat, and soft music played overhead. Sarah noticed immediately that she looked different from most of the other customers, who were dressed more formally and seemed to move through the space with the confidence of people accustomed to making significant purchases. Sarah approached the reception desk, where a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a bright smile greeted incoming customers. When Sarah explained that she was interested in looking at used cars in a specific price range, the receptionist's smile remained professional, but something subtle shifted in her tone. "Of course. Let me see who's available to help you. Most of our senior sales associates are with other customers right now, but I think Marcus might be free." Sarah waited near the reception area, watching the busy showroom activity while nervously reviewing her notebook. She observed how other customers were greeted warmly and immediately escorted to vehicles, often accompanied by multiple staff members who seemed eager to assist. After nearly 15 minutes of waiting, a young man who looked barely out of college approached her. "Hi there, I'm Marcus," he said with a friendly enough smile.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
"I hear you're looking for something in the used car section?" Marcus led Sarah outside to a separate lot behind the main building where the used vehicles were displayed. The contrast was stark. While the new car showroom had been immaculate and welcoming, the used car area felt like an afterthought. The pavement was cracked, there was less lighting, and the cars were parked more haphazardly. "What's your budget looking like?" Marcus asked as they walked between rows of vehicles. Sarah mentioned her price range, and she noticed Marcus's enthusiasm dim slightly. "Okay, well, let's see what we can find in that range," he said, leading her toward the older vehicles in the back corner of the lot. For the next hour, Marcus showed Sarah several cars, but his approach felt rushed and dismissive. He seemed reluctant to let her spend much time examining each vehicle, and when she asked detailed questions from her research notebook, he often gave vague or incomplete answers. Several times, Sarah caught him checking his phone or glancing back toward the main showroom as if he had somewhere else he'd rather be. "This one here might work for you," Marcus said, stopping beside a compact car that had clearly seen better days. The paint was faded, there was a small dent in the rear bumper, and when Sarah looked inside, she noticed the seats were worn and the dashboard had several scratches. Sarah opened her notebook and began asking about the car's maintenance history, accident reports, and warranty options. Marcus seemed increasingly impatient with her questions, giving shorter and shorter responses. When Sarah asked if she could take the car for a test drive, Marcus hesitated. "Well, I'd need to get manager approval for a test drive, and he's pretty busy today," Marcus said. "Maybe you want to think about it and come back another time when you're more ready to make a decision?" The suggestion stung. Sarah had been preparing for this purchase for months, had saved carefully, and had done extensive research. She was as ready as anyone could be, but Marcus was treating her like someone who was just wasting his time. "I am ready to make a decision," Sarah said politely but firmly. "I just want to make sure I'm getting a reliable car." "Could you please check with your manager about the test drive?" Marcus sighed audibly. "Fine, let me go find him. But I should warn you, Mr. Thompson doesn't like to be bothered with small deals when he's got serious customers to work with." The comment was clearly intended to make Sarah feel small, and unfortunately, it worked. She felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment as Marcus walked away, leaving her standing alone beside the worn-looking car. Sarah began to second-guess herself. Maybe she should have waited longer, saved more money, or brought David with her for support. After another 10 minutes of waiting, Marcus returned with a man in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit and a scowl. Everything about Mr. Thompson's appearance screamed authority and impatience. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his shoes were polished to a shine, and his watch looked like it cost more than Sarah made in several months. "So you're the one who wants to test drive the economy cars," Mr. Thompson said, his tone making it clear that he considered this beneath his attention. "Yes, sir," Sarah replied respectfully. "I'm interested in purchasing a reliable used car, and I'd like to take a test drive to make sure it meets my needs."
Mr. Thompson looked Sarah up and down, taking in her simple clothes, her canvas bag, and her nervous demeanor. His expression grew even more dismissive. "Look, miss," he said, "I'm going to be straight with you. This is a serious business, and I don't have time for people who are just shopping around or dreaming about cars they can't afford. If you're not prepared to make a real purchase today, you're wasting everyone's time." Sarah felt as if she'd been slapped. "I am prepared to make a purchase," she said quietly. "I have pre-approval for financing and cash for a down payment." Mr. Thompson snorted. "Pre-approval from where? Some credit union offering you a loan for a few $1,000s? Lady, do you see those people in the showroom? Those are real customers making real purchases. They're buying cars that cost more than you probably make in a year." The humiliation was overwhelming, but Sarah tried to maintain her composure. "I understand I'm not buying an expensive car, but I'm a serious customer. I've done my research, I know what I want, and I'm ready to complete a purchase today." "Research?" Mr. Thompson laughed mockingly. "You think reading some websites makes you an expert? Let me tell you something about the car business, sweetheart. It's not about reading reviews online. It's about understanding value, having real buying power, and working with people who matter." Sarah noticed that other customers and staff members were beginning to stare. The conversation was getting louder, and she was becoming the center of unwanted attention. Her face burned with embarrassment, but she tried one more time to be reasonable. "Sir, I'm not trying to cause any problems. I just want to buy a reliable car within my budget. If you don't want my business, I can certainly go somewhere else." That seemed to trigger something in Mr. Thompson. "Your business?" he said, his voice rising. "You think someone like you walking in here in thrift store clothes with a notebook full of internet research represents real business? You're exactly what's wrong with customers today. You think everyone owes you something just because you show up." The attack was so unexpected and vicious that Sarah actually took a step backward. She had never been spoken to this way in her life, especially not in front of so many strangers. Other customers were openly staring now, and she could see some people taking out their phones. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm not trying to cause any problems. I just want to buy a reliable car within my budget. If you don't want my business, I can certainly go somewhere else." That seemed to trigger something in Mr. Thompson. "Your business?" he said, his voice rising. "You think someone like you walking in here in thrift store clothes with a notebook full of internet research represents real business? You're exactly what's wrong with customers today. You think everyone owes you something just because you show up." The attack was so unexpected and vicious that Sarah actually took a step backward. She had never been spoken to this way in her life, especially not in front of so many strangers. Other customers were openly staring now, and she could see some people taking out their phones. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm not trying to cause any problems. I just want to buy a reliable car within my budget. If you don't want my business, I can certainly go somewhere else." That seemed to trigger something in Mr. Thompson. "Your business?" he said, his voice rising. "You think someone like you walking in here in thrift store clothes with a notebook full of internet research represents real business? You're exactly what's wrong with customers today. You think everyone owes you something just because you show up." "I am prepared to make a purchase," Sarah said quietly. "I have pre-approval for financing and cash for a down payment." Mr. Thompson snorted. "Pre-approval from where? Some credit union offering you a loan for a few $1,000s? Lady, do you see those people in the showroom? Those are real customers making real purchases. They're buying cars that cost more than you probably make in a year." The humiliation was overwhelming, but Sarah tried to maintain her composure. "My job is perfectly respectable," Sarah said quietly. "I'm a librarian. I help people every day, and I work hard for everything I have."
Thompson laughed again, but there was no humor in it. "A librarian? Oh, that's rich. No wonder you think you know everything from reading books. Let me give you some free advice, honey. The real world doesn't work like your little library. Out here, money talks, and people like you need to learn to listen." The cruelty was breathtaking. Sarah had never encountered such unprovoked hostility, especially when she had done nothing wrong except try to make a purchase. She looked around at the crowd that had gathered, hoping someone might intervene or at least show some sympathy. But most people were just watching like it was entertainment. Marcus, who had started this whole situation, was standing nearby looking uncomfortable but saying nothing to defend Sarah or diffuse the situation. Other staff members were watching but seemed unwilling to challenge their manager's behavior. "You know what?" Mr. Thompson continued, warming to his theme. "I bet you don't even have the money you claim to have. People like you come in here all the time, pretending to be serious buyers, wasting our time with your little games. Why don't you prove you're not just another dreamer? Show me this cash you claim to have." The request was humiliating, but Sarah was so desperate to end this nightmare that she actually reached for her bag. She pulled out an envelope containing the cash she had saved over months of careful budgeting, money that represented countless small sacrifices and extra hours of work. Mr. Thompson barely glanced at the envelope. "What's that? Maybe $2,000? That's supposed to impress me? Lady, I've got customers who spend more than that on floor mats. You're in the wrong place, shopping for the wrong cars, and frankly, you're embarrassing yourself." That's when Sarah realized that nothing she could say or do would change this man's mind about her. He had decided, based on her appearance and demeanor, that she was unworthy of basic human decency, let alone customer service. The realization was crushing, but it also sparked something else inside her, a quiet anger at the injustice of it all. "Sir," Sarah said, her voice steadier now, "I came here as a customer in good faith, with money to spend and a sincere desire to make a purchase. The way you've treated me says nothing about me and everything about you." Mr. Thompson's face darkened. "Don't you dare lecture me, little girl. This is my dealership, and I decide who gets to shop here and who doesn't. And I'm telling you right now, we don't want your kind of business." The phrase "your kind" hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Sarah felt the final remnants of her hope for a dignified resolution disappear. She looked around one more time at all the faces staring at her, memorizing this moment of complete humiliation. "I understand," Sarah said quietly. "You've made your position very clear." She turned to walk away, but Mr. Thompson wasn't finished with her yet. "And next time you go car shopping, maybe try the used car lots across town. They're more suited to people in your situation." Sarah stopped walking. She turned around slowly and looked directly at Mr. Thompson. Something in her expression must have been different because his smug smile faltered slightly. "My situation?" Sarah asked quietly. "You know what I mean," Mr. Thompson said, but he seemed less certain now. Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I do know what you mean, and I think you're about to learn something very important about making assumptions." She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she had memorized years ago, but had never expected to use in a situation like this. As the phone rang, Sarah kept her eyes locked on Mr. Thompson's face, watching as confusion began to replace his earlier smugness. "Hi, honey. I'm at Premier Motors, and I think you need to know what's happening here." The voice that answered Sarah's call was warm and familiar, cutting through the tension like a lifeline. "Hey, sweetheart, how's the car shopping going?" Sarah kept her eyes fixed on Mr. Thompson's face as she spoke. "David, I need you to come to Premier Motors right away. There's been a situation." She could hear the immediate concern in her husband's voice. "What kind of situation? Are you okay?" "I'm physically fine, but I think you need to see what's happening here for yourself. I'm in the used car section with Mr. Thompson, the sales manager." There was a pause on the other end of the line.
When David spoke again, his tone had changed completely. "Did you say Mr. Thompson?" "Yes," He's made it very clear that someone like me isn't welcome at this dealership." Mr. Thompson was starting to look uncomfortable. The confidence he had displayed earlier was beginning to crack as he watched Sarah's demeanor transform during the phone conversation. Something about her sudden composure seemed to unnerve him. "Sarah," David's voice was tight with controlled anger, "put me on speaker." Sarah complied, holding out her phone so everyone in the gathering crowd could hear. "David, you're on speaker." "Mr. Thompson," David's voice rang out clearly across the lot. "This is David Chen. I believe you know who I am." The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. Mr. Thompson's face went from red to white in a matter of seconds. His mouth opened and closed several times without producing any sound. Marcus, who had been standing nearby, trying to look invisible, suddenly straightened up with recognition dawning in his eyes. "Mr. Chen," Mr. Thompson stammered. "Sir, I had no idea. I mean, we weren't expecting—" "Clearly," David's voice cut through the stammering, "because if you had known who my wife was, you wouldn't have humiliated her in front of your customers and staff." The crowd that had gathered to watch Sarah's humiliation was now witnessing something entirely different. Whispers rippled through the group as people began to realize they were watching a dramatic reversal of fortune. Mr. Thompson was struggling to form coherent sentences. "Your wife? But she doesn't— How was I supposed to know?" "How were you supposed to know what, Mr. Thompson?" David's voice was dangerously quiet. "How were you supposed to know that you should treat all customers with basic respect? How were you supposed to know that judging people by their appearance is wrong? Please, enlighten me." Sarah watched as Mr. Thompson's entire demeanor crumbled. The arrogant, condescending man who had verbally attacked her moments earlier was now visibly shaking as he grasped the magnitude of his mistake. "Sir, please, there's been a misunderstanding," Mr. Thompson pleaded. "If I had known she was your wife, I never would have—" "Never would have what?" David interrupted. "Never would have been cruel to a customer? Never would have insulted someone trying to make a purchase? Never would have humiliated a woman in front of a crowd?" The questions hung in the air like accusations. Mr. Thompson seemed to realize that every answer would only make his situation worse. Marcus stepped forward hesitantly. "Mr. Chen, sir, I was just trying to help the customer find something in her price range." "Her price range?" David's voice rose slightly. "Marcus, do you have any idea what my wife could afford to buy if she wanted to? Do you understand that she chose to look at modestly priced cars because that's the kind of person she is?" Sarah felt a surge of love for her husband. Even in his anger, he understood and defended the values that made her who she was. "I'm 5 minutes away," David continued. "Mr. Thompson, I suggest you use that time to think very carefully about what you're going to say when I arrive." The call ended, leaving an electric silence over the used car lot. Mr. Thompson stood frozen, apparently trying to process the catastrophic turn of events. The customers who had watched Sarah's earlier humiliation were now staring at her with a mixture of shock and dawning respect. "Ma'am," Marcus said quietly, "is there anything I can do to make this better?" Sarah looked at the young salesman who had treated her dismissively all afternoon. "You can start by treating every customer who walks onto this lot with the same respect you would show someone you thought was important." Mr. Thompson suddenly sprang into action, his survival instincts finally kicking in. "Mrs. Chen, please, let me personally show you our finest vehicles. We have some excellent options that would be perfect for someone of your standing." The irony was almost laughable. Sarah shook her head. "Mr. Thompson, an hour ago you told me I was wasting your time. You said people like me needed to learn our place. You questioned whether I even had the money I claimed to have. What exactly has changed?" I made a mistake," Mr. Thompson said desperately. "I was having a stressful day, and I took it out on you. That was completely unprofessional." "A stressful day?" Sarah repeated. "So when you're stressed, you decide to attack customers based on how they're dressed? You tell people they're not good enough to shop here? You mock their professions and their financial situations?" Each question was like a dagger, and Mr. Thompson seemed to shrink with every word. The crowd was still watching, many now recording the confrontation on their phones. "Please," Mr. Thompson begged, "tell me what I can do to fix this. I'll personally ensure you get the best deal on any car you want. I'll waive all fees, arrange special financing." "Now you want to give me special treatment," Sarah observed, "because you found out who my husband is. But what about every other customer who walks in here without connections? What about the next person you decide isn't worthy of basic respect?" The sound of car doors slamming echoed across the lot. Sarah turned to see David striding toward them, his expression thunderous. Even from a distance, his anger was palpable. He moved with the confident authority of a man accustomed to being in charge, and his presence seemed to change the very atmosphere of the lot. Mr. Thompson's panic escalated as David approached. "Mr. Chen, sir, please let me explain." David held up a hand for silence as he reached Sarah. His first concern was entirely for his wife. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice completely different when addressing her. "I'm fine now," Sarah said, meaning it. Seeing her husband's protective fury and witnessing Mr. Thompson's complete breakdown had restored her sense of dignity. David turned his attention to Mr. Thompson, and his expression hardened again.
Now, I want you to explain to me exactly what happened here. And I want the truth. Mr. Thompson launched into a rambling, desperate explanation that somehow managed to make his actions sound even worse. He tried to downplay his cruelty, excuse his behavior, and shift blame to miscommunication. With each word, he dug himself deeper. "Stop," David said finally. "Just stop talking." The authority in his voice was absolute. Mr. Thompson fell silent immediately. "In 30 years of owning this dealership," David continued, "I have never been more ashamed of the behavior of my staff. The way you treated my wife today represents everything this business stands against." The revelation that David actually owned Premier Motors sent a fresh wave of shock through the crowd. Mr. Thompson looked like he might faint. "You own?" Mr. Thompson whispered. "I own this dealership, yes. I also own the building, the land, and everything on it, including your job," David said coldly. "Or rather, I owned your job, past tense." Please, sir, I have a family, a mortgage. I've worked here for 8 years." 8 years, David repeated. 8 years of representing my business to the public. 8 years during which you apparently learned nothing about treating people with dignity and respect. Sarah watched her husband handle the situation with a controlled fury that was somehow more devastating than screaming would have been. She had never seen this side of him, this commanding presence that came from years of running a successful business. "The decision is final," David continued. "You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clean out your office." Mr. Thompson's complete downfall was almost difficult to watch. The man who had been so cruel and superior just minutes earlier was now reduced to begging for mercy from the woman he had humiliated. "Mrs. Chen, please," he turned to Sarah desperately. "You seem like a kind person. Please ask your husband to reconsider." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. "You're right, Mr. Thompson. I am a kind person. I'm the kind of person who pays for expired coupons to help a cashier. I'm the kind of person who treats everyone with respect, regardless of their job or appearance. And you targeted those exact qualities to hurt me as deeply as possible." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You didn't just insult me today. You insulted every customer who doesn't drive a luxury car. You insulted every person who has to budget carefully for major purchases. You insulted everyone who works in service professions. The way you treated me is the way you've probably treated countless other people who couldn't fight back." Mr. Thompson had no response. He stood there defeated, the consequences of his cruelty finally catching up to him. David put his arm around Sarah. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go home.
You can pick out a car another day, somewhere you'll be treated with the respect you deserve." As they walked away together, Sarah felt a profound sense of justice. Not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been made to feel small by someone who thought they were better. Sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales, and today had been one of those days. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.